What's up, everybody? I'm a Teleworker. Today we are doing a spoiler talk for The Flash. I already did my review if you guys want to hear my general thoughts on the movie, and we're basically just going to spend this whole time picking apart everything we do and don't like about the film, and then we're going to talk about some of the controversy surrounding the film afterwards. So yeah, let's get into it. So go ahead and start off by giving us your general overall thoughts of the movie, and then your score, and then we'll just start dissecting this whole film.
Okay, yeah. So basically I'm a little late to the party on this one because I was on a cruise in Alaska with some friends. Not you. You weren't invited, bitch. No.
I noticed.
Considering you saw the movie like 2 weeks before I did.
I saw it
Yeah,
twice before you saw it once.
I know, fuck off. um yeah, so I just saw the movie tonight and I gotta say I did really enjoy it. I thought it was a really fun movie. In a vacuum, it was really cool. Man, there's so much to talk about this movie, and it's hard to talk without the spoilers, but there's a lot of great action scenes. There's some really great heartfelt moments that I really enjoyed, especially near the end of the movie. And overall, I thought, even though it has its problems, especially with the CGI, um, I did really enjoy the movie. I would think I would probably give it a 7. That's what, I kind of told you. I would give it like a 7 or 7.5, I think, right now. Maybe it'll go up or down if I see the movie again. But yeah, that right now, that's my overall thoughts on it. I thought up until the third act, it was really great. It's maybe a bit slow in the first act, kind of, but I didn't really notice it that much. The third act gets really strange and very feels like it's very uh, rushed at the end, but overall, yeah, I thought it was a pretty fun movie.
If you guys haven't seen my review, my general thoughts were basically the same. I didn't like the humor that
Hmm.
much in most of the film, so my score was a little lower. I gave it a 6.5.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't hate this movie, but I didn't love it either. Like, I could
Hmm.
watch it again. I wouldn't be upset with people if they love it or anything like that. It's just,
Yeah.
it's one of those movies that I feel it. But I think part of the reason that a lot of people are coming out of this movie with mixed reactions right now, even if they liked the movie, a lot of the positive reviews that I've been seeing, they like the movie, but they don't love the movie. They're kind of where we are, where like it has a
Yeah.
lot of problems. And I think a big reason that people are coming out with mixed reception is that I think that Warner Brothers made the mistake of over promising on what this movie meant.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest things that they said about this movie, besides the fact that everybody on the planet was coming out saying that it was the greatest superhero movie ever,
Yeah.
which it definitely is not,
No.
um, they also made the mistake of having James Gunn promise that this was going to reset the DC universe.
Yeah.
And I guess this is kind of out of order, but I'll talk about the ending briefly here. Um,
Yeah.
the George Clooney cameo is there
Yeah.
as like a gag to surprise everybody, and it's
Sure.
supposed to be funny, and it is funny. I thought the scene
Hmm.
was funny. Um, but the ending implies that the Batman in the new timeline is George Clooney.
Yeah.
However, James Gunn has come out multiple times and now once after the film has released saying that Batman will be a new actor and they have not been cast yet.
Wait, he said that after the movie came out?
Yes.
Okay, that's new information.
So this
Okay.
is a problem because it implies that James Gunn, knowing that this movie would not end with our definitive new timeline and was going to end with a joke, basically lied to everybody and said that this was setting up the new universe, which it
Yeah.
wasn't. And that is causing quite a controversy online right now because people are very
Uh,
upset because they feel like they were misled by everybody at Warner Brothers so that they could like trick them into going to see this movie.
Yeah.
And really, you could skip this movie and watch all the reboot movies and not be confused.
Uh, yeah, if that's to be believed, then yeah, I guess you could. If they're really completely rebooting everything.
Well, this movie's flopping really fucking hard right now. Like,
Yeah.
devastatingly hard. Like, Warner Brothers is
Yeah.
gonna lose, like, an estimated, like, $300 million on this movie, which is
Yeah.
insane.
It is very insane.
At this
I'm not
point, it
that
might have been
shocked, but
better if they just did the tax write-off.
yeah.
Because at least then they would have kind of saved themselves a little, but I understand why they really wanted to put this movie out and hoped that it would blow up.
I think they were hoping Michael Keaton might have saved that, and it didn't
And Michael
really
Keaton
go
was
that way.
great, don't get me wrong.
I mean, no, yeah,
But
in the movie he's great,
I
but like,
don't think in today's audience that Michael Keaton is as big of a draw as Warner Brothers thought it was.
well, it's his return as Batman, and I think they were hoping a lot of people would go see that. I'm
Yeah,
kind of
I just
surprised
think
that nobody did.
yeah, the I think the general audience is like, yeah, everybody that's our age that knows of Michael Keaton's Batman, and then
Yeah,
anybody our parents' age who grew up with Michael Keaton's Batman,
right.
they were excited for it. But there's a
Yeah.
ton of people our age and younger that have never seen Michael Keaton's Batman.
Oh yeah, for
So
sure.
when you show like this is your new superhero movie, most of the general audience that goes to see this movie is going to be people in their 20s and younger.
Right.
And
If
they've
it were like,
never seen Michael Keaton before. So when
if
you
it
go, "Oh,
were,
look, it's the original Batman." Some
yeah.
kid is like, "I don't give a fuck, where's Bale?"
No, yeah, I was about to say if it were Bale, it'd be probably different. Like a lot more people our age and younger would know all about the Bale movies.
Yeah. And that's not to say that like Michael Keaton's Batman isn't good or anything like that. I'm
Oh
just
no,
saying like
of course, yeah. It's a
the
lot of people's
unfortunate
favorite.
truth is that most people our age and younger have never seen Michael Keaton's movies before.
Sure, yeah.
So it's hard to say like, yeah, sure, he probably did help a lot with how much money this
Oh
movie
yeah,
has made. I'm sure probably a quarter of the ticket sales that have been happening are because people were curious about Michael
at
Keaton's return.
least. At least a quarter. I mean, that was the big marketing push for this movie was Michael Keaton's Batman. Like
Yeah.
honestly, he was in it almost more than the Flash was.
So
I'm okay. That changes a lot because I didn't know about James Gunn tweeting after the movie came out. Because in my mind, I was just like, oh, well, I guess he lied and this is our DCU Batman.
yeah, it's not.
So, what are your thoughts on just imagine he didn't tweet that and it's implied that this is our new Batman?
Okay, so if it was implied that this is our new Batman, and this
Yeah.
is okay, we'll talk about one of the CinemaCon things right now too, because this is a big
Okay.
one.
Oh, shit.
So at CinemaCon, they
Mm-hmm.
told everybody that the movie was unfinished
Right.
and it cut before the credits played. There was no credits,
Sure.
no after credits, no nothing, right?
Yeah.
The ending that CinemaCon got did not show George Clooney.
Oh, what?
It showed the car pull up, him get out of the car, but you never saw his face, and it cut to Flash. He goes, "Who the fuck is this?" And then it ends. They do not
Oh.
show, they actually cut out George Clooney from the CinemaCon
They
version.
kept it a secret
Now,
from the CinemaCon.
either
Okay.
that was because they didn't want it to leak early because the movie was so early, or they were leading the people at CinemaCon on to believe that that would be our new Batman.
Right.
One of those is problematic because a lot of people at CinemaCon that I've seen their reviews now were saying that they thought that that was the tease for, oh, that's the perfect ending because we don't know who
Right.
Batman is yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the movie came out and they found out that it was Clooney and they're not keeping Clooney, now they're like, well, what the fuck was the point in even putting Clooney in it?
Right.
So
But this is the ending that they put in there, right? That you said James Gunn
yeah,
himself
so
put in there.
the David Zaslav James Gunn regime is the one that put the George Clooney ending in. They filmed this a few months ago.
Huh.
So they changed the previous ending, which of course we know because of the Batgirl movie that was being made that is now canned. The
Yeah.
original ending for this film, well, not the original, but the last one they had before James Gunn came in, was that they were going to keep Michael Keaton as the main universe Batman.
Yeah, because I remember them. So they were filming outside uh, a courthouse. I remember years ago when they were
Mm-hmm.
filming this movie, and that car pulls up, and Michael Keaton gets out of the car, and we didn't know the context of that, but that was the ending. So Michael Keaton was gonna
Yeah,
stay as
there's
Batman.
also set photos of him and Supergirl both outside of the courthouse.
Yeah, Supergirl was also there too.
So essentially, the ending we had before James Gunn changed it implied that Michael Keaton was going to stay. But he didn't
Right.
want people to think that they were keeping Michael Keaton because then if they didn't, people would be upset. So
Yeah.
they changed it because they're doing the reboot.
Right.
However, James Gunn told everybody that this was going to set up the new universe. So
Hmm.
then they put George Clooney in there and didn't set up the new universe, which is really
Very
weird. And now, one of the
strange.
things people have been talking about is the after credit scene. Because if you
Yeah.
pay close attention to what Barry says to Arthur in the after credit scene, he
Hmm.
says that all of them were Batman and they were all Bruce Wayne, but they were different people, implying that he met multiple alternate Bruce Waynes.
Yeah, not just the one Michael Keaton or even two. That to me it implies like a lot of different Bruce Waynes, not
So
just one or two.
some people think that the after credit scene was implying that the after credit scene sets up the new universe in that Barry had to fix some more shit to get to the universe they're in now,
Yeah.
and now they're telling us that Arthur is staying, Jason Momoa is going to be our Aquaman.
But here's the thing, if
The
that's true,
problem with that is
why
that's like
would
a whole
why would
Flash
he
sequel that didn't happen
change?
on screen.
Well, no, not just that. Why? Okay, so he sees George Clooney, he tries to fix it again. Why would he then stay in a universe where it's still not Ben Affleck's Batman?
Exactly, exactly. That is the problem. The whole ending for this movie is that's what the biggest problem is that I've been seeing is that people are like, what the fuck was the point in
Hmm.
this movie? Because you told us that we should see it because it sets up the new timeline,
Hmm.
but it doesn't.
Well, I mean, to be fair to the movie, it was never made with that intention. Like, I get why people would be mad that they feel misled, but like,
Yeah, it was never
that
set.
movie was
It was
never
never meant
made
to
to be.
reboot to a
Yeah.
completely new universe. It was meant to reset like one actor.
It
It was not
feels
supposed
like
to reset the whole universe. So
it
I
feels like the George
understand,
Clooney thing
but
was just added to either be another fun Easter egg at the end of the movie or to mislead. And I don't know, it just depends on how it goes in the future whether that's was a good idea or not, I guess.
yeah, I don't blame Andy Muschietti for most of the problems with this film
Yeah.
because I think the majority of them are because of all the production problems and all the delays and all the
Oh
rewrites
yeah.
and the reshoots
This
and the
movie had a lot of
I
baggage.
think that the reason the CGI in this movie is so bad is because it never got finished because they kept changing the movie and they didn't want to spend more on the VFX until they knew for sure what was going to be in it.
Yeah, this movie's
And
already
then
spent a lot of money.
but you could tell in the last scene that Ezra Miller looks different. If you look at his face,
That he
he
looks different.
he looks different in the courthouse scene at the end than he did in the courthouse because they
Oh, you
reshot that
think?
scene a couple
Oh,
months ago.
yeah, yeah, because they would have shot that more recently. I didn't really notice. Maybe if I see it again, I'll notice more. I wasn't paying attention to that.
Yeah, so that the ending of the film is one of my biggest issues with the entire movie because they led us to believe that this was the beginning of the new DC universe or the setup for the new DC universe,
Yeah.
and it's not. So that was one of the biggest disappointments I had with the film was that I went in expecting what Warner Brothers sold me. And it wasn't
Yeah,
that.
I
Which
don't know. I
isn't, like
just
I said, it's not Andy Muschietti's fault,
yeah.
but it is Warner Brothers' fault that they
Okay,
told everybody that, and that is the
but
biggest problem.
here's the thing. Is you said there were three endings.
Yes.
So there's the George Clooney one, the Michael Keaton and Supergirl one, and what's the third?
Okay, so this is the fun part, right? So
Oh
this
God.
movie originally had an ending that I don't know what it
Yeah.
was, okay? But they
Okay.
filmed an ending for this movie. And then the people who took over during the Black Adam era
Okay.
changed the ending, they rewrote it, and
Okay.
the ending was going to be that Superman and Supergirl showed up, and that it
What?
was going to be Henry Cavill.
Okay.
And that was supposed to be the follow up to what happened in
The
Black Adam.
Black
That they
Adam was
reintroduced Henry
fresh.
Cavill, Henry Cavill's coming back. And apparently, they were working on, not quite in pre production yet, but they were working on another Superman film with Henry Cavill.
Yeah, they kind of already hinted at that when Henry
So,
Cavill announced his that he was back.
so the idea was essentially that Superman and Supergirl were both going to be there because they didn't
Right.
want the audience to think that Supergirl was dead in case they wanted to use her again.
Right.
So they wrote a whole sequence at the end of the film where Barry was going to talk to Clark and Kara, and that got scrapped
Huh.
for the
For
so
the
it was the Michael Keaton ending. Then the Michael Keaton ending got scrapped. Then they did that
okay.
one. That one got scrapped. Now we have this one.
Ah, damn.
And so it all in post production. This movie was already done.
Right.
They changed the ending 3 times.
Do we know if they ever filmed the Henry Cavill ending?
I don't know. I've heard conflicting things. Some people say that they
Hmm.
did film stuff with Henry Cavill. Most people are saying they didn't. So I'm going to assume that they didn't. But
It's hard to tell because like the announcement that he was back came right after Black Adam had come out. But then like what, maybe a month or two later they said, "Nah, never mind."
mhm.
So, I don't know when they would have had time to film that.
Yeah, I don't think they had time to film anything with him.
I highly doubt it.
Unless they filmed it around the same time that they filmed the Black Adam cameo,
That could have been true
which
too,
is
yeah.
technically possible, but I don't think that that's true.
If they already had Henry Cavill on the day in a costume,
Yeah.
it's possible they would have done that.
So it basically the ending of the film, it the whole third act of this movie essentially was constantly being reworked,
Yeah.
and you can tell.
Yeah,
Especially during
for sure.
the fucking cameo fest that
Yeah.
happened because good god, the CGI. And they said that the CG like there was more cameos than this.
Yeah,
And
he
so
said
now I'm
that
like,
there was a lot.
did they finish the CGI on some of the cameos and then they were cut and then they didn't finish the CGI on the ones that were left in?
Could have been.
Or like what happened? Because you used CGI to recreate dead people.
Yeah.
That deserved the budget, okay? It deserved the
Yeah, for
time.
sure.
That should have
That
looked good
was
because that is one of the diciest things that you can do is have a dead
yeah.
actor in your film, And the
Uh,
fact that it looked bad is
do we want to get into the whole cameo like thing then? I guess right now
yeah, let's talk about it.
the whole just the whole sequence.
Actually, one
So
one of the cameos is also a big controversy that we'll talk about too. So,
I'm assuming I heard. Okay, I did see a spoiler for the movie
hmm
before going in, and it was that they put George Reeves Superman in the
yeah,
movie. I saw that, and the why I saw it was because I saw a Facebook post talking about how he pretty much killed himself because the Superman role was so tough on him, and then they put a what they said was a tasteless CGI cameo in the movie. And I'm conflicted on it because I absolutely understand where that's coming from, but at the same time, I don't know, like people love his Superman. He was like the original Superman, so I get why they did it. And honestly, his looked fine to me.
yeah, his was the
Excuse
best
me.
of the CGI
His
cameos. His looks the
yeah,
best. I don't know if
his
maybe it's
looked
just
really
because it's
good.
in black and white, so you don't notice the
That might
imperfections
have
as
been
much. But I
yeah,
will say
his
this though,
I thought was like archive footage at first, but
there is
yeah.
one incredibly eerie detail about
Mhm.
this situation that I cannot tell if it was the weirdest coincidence or one of the possibly darkest things I've heard of Warner Brothers doing.
Uh, what?
And that is that so George Reeves when he died basically didn't have any like family essentially.
Yeah,
So they didn't really have to get anybody's permission to do this,
to use his likeness. Yeah,
which is a little weird,
yeah,
but at the same time it's like I get it cuz you're trying to pay homage to him
yeah.
and like it didn't feel like they were doing it as like a fuck you to him. It felt like they
No,
were
it
doing it as
felt
like
like
a
an actual like
this is the original Superman, we want to make sure people remember him kind of thing.
it's an homage. Yeah,
And that's why I'm torn on it because it felt like it was coming from a good place.
yeah.
But this one detail really fucks with me about it.
Hmm.
And it's that so all the controversy around George Reeves and his suicide and Superman and all that stuff, right?
Right.
They released the movie on the anniversary of his suicide.
Really? That's insane.
That is either the weirdest coincidence ever that they didn't realize, or it feels really fucked up.
I
Because,
I'm gonna have to say that it's a coincidence, not just because I don't know what my brain would do if it wasn't, but this movie got pushed back a lot.
yeah, that's
Like
why
a
I
lot.
think it was a
I
coincidence.
think it was
And
just an
if it
honest
wasn't the
coincidence
coincidence, I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt and say maybe they put it out on the anniversary of his death because he's in it and it's an homage.
as a
And
tribute
so
to
it's to
him.
honor
Yeah.
him on the day that he died.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what it was, but it's really fucking eerie that the
It's a
movie
strange
used
choice if it was on
CGI
purpose.
to recreate a guy who is debated on whether or not he even liked playing Superman, who
Yeah.
killed himself, and
Yeah,
now
that's a
you use CGI to recreate him instead of
yeah.
using actual footage of him. And
That was
then
strange.
it came out on the anniversary of his suicide. That's super
Yeah.
weird. That's a very uncomfortable situation to think about. And I don't know how I feel about it. It really fucks with me.
Yeah. And then so we got that one which looked really good. Then we got Christopher Reeve Superman and his version of Supergirl, which I don't think it looked strange, but I didn't think it looked like fucking awful. It looked all right, I think.
It's
Um,
passable enough that you know it's Christopher Reeve
well,
and
yeah,
and
you
it's
definitely know
not
what it's
like
supposed to be.
it's not like unrecognizable kind of bad,
Yeah,
but it's still not great.
it's not great, and but yeah, it's it was pretty cool in the moment, but I was like, okay, it looked a bit strange.
Oh,
I don't
here's
know.
here's one I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah.
That I just remembered right now. So you know how there's a Jay Garrick cameo?
I was gonna talk about that too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's being debated right now whether that was Teddy Sears,
I
who
will bet
plays
like
the
yeah,
the first version of Jay Garrick we see
the
on the CW.
quote unquote Jay Garrick
Yeah,
in the
which
Flash.
I
Yeah.
actually really loved him as Jay before they did the
No, I
twist.
loved him too. I would
However,
bet like $30 that was not him.
so yeah, basically everybody thought it was Teddy Sears.
Yeah.
And to the point that it was like in news articles and stuff talking about the cameos that were in the movie.
Oh, was it?
And then somebody finally asked him about it, and he was like, I think I would remember filming something for that. So he he kind of was joking about it, and he's like, I have a newborn at home and I'm really tired, but I think I would
Yeah.
remember, kind of thing. But it was like,
Yeah.
it was basically his way of saying like, no, that was not me. And
No, it definitely was not him.
I
Because
just
I
thought that
I
that
looked
was really
real close
funny.
when I saw that, and I was like, that's not him.
But at the same time, the CGI on those cameos was really rough, so
Sure, the CG on the cameos were rough, but like you still knew who it was. Plus, the suit looked a bit different than his. I think. I
yeah,
don't
it
know.
was hard to tell. You can't see it too clearly,
It's like in
but
black and white, and he's like running through the sphere like Barry
that was
is.
another thing that I thought was strange. So
Yeah,
they do like this Chrono Bowl time sphere thing,
yeah.
right? Which is a concept that I'm kind of torn on because the
Hmm.
idea of him seeing his memories around him like that is a really cool concept.
I thought it was pretty cool.
The execution of it is a little strange, like when he
Oh,
pokes just his head out and he's like
uh
looking at
huh.
the babies. I was
Yeah.
like, what the fuck?
No, yeah, it was definitely a strange look, but I don't know. I thought it was all right.
It was a cool concept, but I've never
See, okay,
seen the Flash's powers represented like that, so it really threw me off.
true. It's a very
And
different
then the
interpretation.
idea of being able to put just part of yourself in the past and not actually
Yeah,
like just stop in that time
yeah. He could
was
just
really
like
weird.
look through the. Yeah, it is strange for sure.
But they had Jay Garrick also running in one, right? So it's like
It looked like that's what he was doing. Yeah,
you could see the Flash notices the Flash through the
yeah,
multiverse. He even looks up at the
yeah.
multiverse, like he
He
sees
looks up
him.
at him. Yeah,
It's really strange to me that that wasn't the cameo idea for this movie.
that wasn't the cameo idea.
I think that, like, yeah, don't get me wrong, it's great to see Christopher Reeve. It was really cool to see the Superman Lives
Hmm.
script adapted into a cameo and stuff like that. Was really cool.
Yeah,
But I think that it would have been more impactful if in that moment when they realize what they're doing and it's affecting the timelines and the multiverse and all that stuff, if
hmm.
he had looked over and seen all the other Flashes
I mean, that would have been
that
awesome
were
too.
all realizing what was happening
Yeah,
and being like, yo, stop. Like, that
yeah.
I think would have been better than just the random, ooh, look who's here.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't think either way of it. I just think the idea was cool to be able to see other versions of the characters and being able to see versions that we've already seen,
You
especially
know,
since you have Keaton in the movie.
what was one
So,
problem I had with that?
hmm,
Is like it was cool to see the multiverse, right?
yeah,
But I didn't like that they just randomly started doing like a Crisis on Infinite Earth thing and destroying those universes.
yeah,
Because they never addressed that again after that. And they never really explain how that's happening. Because the film
right.
kind of goes back and forth between whether it's a time travel movie or a multiverse movie.
Hmm.
And I really wish they were more clear on that. Because they kind of imply in the Michael Keaton scene when he's explaining with the spaghetti
Yeah,
that every universe is like an alternate timeline where things are different,
right.
which is technically true. But it's also implying that like the only way within the rules of the film, obviously, which could
Yeah,
be changed later on with sequels and things like that. But in the
sure.
context of this one film, it's kind of implying that the only way you can access those other universes is by changing something in time,
Yeah,
which is really weird because for like 60 years of comic books now, they've had it where they could just jump universes.
sure. I
So
mean,
it's
it's a
it's
different version.
it's a really weird take that and they don't really explain whether it's two separate concepts or if it's the same concept.
I feel like it's supposed to be the same concept, but I feel like there was more that could have been explained. It's just that you didn't need it for the story that was being told
Yeah, and
at the
see
time.
that's one of my more nitpicky kind of complaints about this film
Hmm.
is that at first they explain the usual DC rules, which is that
Yeah,
time travel is linear, you change the past, it causes a ripple effect that changes the whole timeline.
right.
And the only way you can fix it is by undoing what you changed.
Yeah,
But then, so then they set up the whole first like two-thirds of the movie is that
yeah,
both the Barrys are the same Barry from the same timeline, just one is from the future.
yeah.
Then, when Michael Keaton comes into play, they change the rules for like the third act. And it's kind of strange because if the rules earlier in the film still apply, and they are the same Barry from the same universe, then the whole twist sequence with the evil Barry doesn't make sense.
Well, I don't think it was supposed to be the same Barry from the same universe. Wasn't the implication that it's a different Barry because he's in the universe with Michael Keaton's Batman?
Yes and no, because earlier in the movie they tell us that they are the same Barry, but things are only different because Barry changed the timeline.
I
So
mean, what do you mean?
did Barry travel to another Earth or did he change the past?
Well, he changed the past, and then by changing the past, he put himself on a completely different universe timeline. That's what Michael Keaton was explaining. So yeah, it's the same Barry-ish, but it's not like the exact same situation
Yeah, cuz
because there's a
this
different Michael
this
Keaton.
was
There's
my
no Superman.
yeah, no, I get it. But I'm saying
Or
this
different
was my
Batman.
problem with that is because they don't fully explain these things.
Hmm.
When earlier in the film they tell the audience that if Barry doesn't get his powers when he's supposed to,
Uh-huh.
future Barry won't have his powers and he won't be able to get home.
Well, that's just what he assumes.
Yeah,
So,
but
because he
that's
does lose
but
his
that's what I'm
powers, but
saying is that's
we don't really
my
know
only
why.
issue really with all the stuff in the film is that they
Yeah.
change the rules for the third act so that the third act will make sense.
Well, I don't know about
And but
because
it's
at the
really
time,
hard
Barry.
to like differentiate between different universe, different timeline, is this multiverse, is it not?
Well,
Because
it's
if it
just
is
changing
just
as
that
Barry learns more about his situation. Like, because when he gets to his younger self, obviously, at the time, he's thinking time is linear. This needs to happen, or else I'm not going to get my powers. But then later on, when he gets to Batman, Michael Keaton, then he explains, no, that's wrong. You're doing this instead.
yeah, but the so the Michael Keaton scene, he explains that if you change the future, you change the past. If you change the past, you change the future, right? Because it's like a ripple
Yeah,
effect.
right. Well, it's more than a ripple effect. It's like I can't. He used a specific term. Like I just watched the movie once and I can't remember everything. He used a specific term that he's basically on a completely different like multiversal timeline that's parallel to his, but it's not the same exactly because obviously Batman is older, but in 2013, so
Yeah,
and a completely different person.
so the biggest reason I have a problem with this is
Hmm.
because of the evil berry twist scene, which,
Hmm.
by the way, was completely unimportant. I think
Yeah,
that whole sequence was unnecessary. We didn't need the evil berry created himself twist.
yeah,
That sequence would have been much more emotional if it was just the tension between the two berries and then
yeah,
the younger berry realizing he has to let go
yeah.
instead of the weird self-sacrifice random thing to the evil berry. It was just like it felt very
Well,
shoved
that
in.
is
I
the
think
thing that the
maybe it
Dark Flash seemed like it was supposed to be like the villain of the movie, but he only showed up like twice.
yeah,
you
and
know,
I
it's
think the
strange.
idea behind it is that it's the visual representation to the young Flash of why he has to stop.
Why
But
he
instead of
can't
there being an
do that.
emotional moment of, oh my god, this is what I'm going to become, I have to stop.
Yeah,
Instead, the evil Flash tries to kill the main Barry, and then the young Barry jumps in the way and gets stabbed.
yeah.
And this is my problem with the timeline science. Okay?
Uh huh.
If the youngest Barry dying erased the evil Barry, right? Because they're
Uh huh.
from that timeline.
Yeah.
And it doesn't erase the main Barry because he's not from that timeline.
Uh huh.
By those timeline rules of like you if your previous self is affected, then you wouldn't exist on the timeline anymore, right?
Right.
If those
Basic
rules
timeline
exist,
rules.
wouldn't the main Barry not exist because he changed his past that changed the course of his entire life and created this new timeline?
Hmm.
How does he exist within that timeline if it's just that the timeline has been changed because of him and not that he's traveled to a completely different Earth with a completely different set of rules? You know what I mean?
So you're asking why would he still exist?
Why would the main Barry still exist after erasing his whole past and everything,
Hmm.
and now being on a universe where in his timeline the world is ended?
Uh huh.
How does he still exist?
Well, I kind
Because
of feel
then they
obviously they
explain
don't
in
go
that
into it.
scene that the younger Barry dying erases the older Barry. The main Barry erased his point in time doesn't exist anymore because the world ends. So how does he exist?
Well, it's probably because he's in a different timeline. Like, so again, they don't really go into it, so I can't say for sure. But you know how the time race worked in the show, basically, where like, oh, they figured out this Barry isn't supposed to be here, so they went and they'll go after him and try to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
But he could still be there as long as they don't catch him. I kind of feel like it's something like that because he's not in his own universe at the time, so nothing's affecting him. But then he has to go fix everything, and then he goes back to his timeline.
But see, that's the part where I'm confused because is this a new timeline that's replacing the original timeline because of what Barry changed?
Hmm.
Or is this a separate universe he traveled to through the Speed Force after he changed the past? Because if he changed his current timeline, right?
Hmm.
And then it
Yeah.
changed everything about the universe. Like him going back, but then he goes back and solves the problem by just undoing what he did.
Right.
So it's still the same timeline, but it's also not.
Well, I feel like it's hard to tell whether it's supposed to be the same timeline or if it's just another, more the same where he's on a different multiversal timeline again. Because the movie was meant to be a cliffhanger ending, but it's also like with the even with like the Michael Keaton and Supergirl ending in mind, it's like, okay, did he just reset the timeline and now shit's still different? You know?
Okay, actually, I have an answer for that, and it's arguably my biggest problem with the ending of the film.
Uh-huh.
Barry does not learn his lesson at the end of the movie.
Barry doesn't learn his lesson.
He does not learn his lesson. The lesson of the film is that you can't change your past because your past defines you and it makes you who you are, and those things needed to happen. So Barry has to learn to let go and allow
Right.
his past to be the past, right?
Right.
Then when he goes to the grocery store, we learn earlier in the film that the footage of his dad was unusable because he never looked up.
Hmm.
After Barry puts the sauce back, which is essentially killing his mother, he
Uh-huh.
rearranged the tomato sauce on the shelf so that his dad would have to look up, and he saved his dad, which changed the timeline again, causing George Clooney to be there.
You think that's what changed it? I
I
mean,
think that
technically it
because
could be.
Barry changed another thing in the past, it caused more side effects.
Mm,
But it's really
interesting.
dumb to me that Barry would risk that after seeing how catastrophic the consequences were.
Yeah.
Why would he save his dad?
Hmm.
Like I don't understand I don't understand what they were thinking when they wrote that scene. Like obviously they needed a reason for Michael Keaton to be there at the end of the film if that's what they were
Yeah.
going to keep. But from a storytelling standpoint, it's the whole moral of the story is letting go of your past and you shouldn't change it. And then he changes it.
Yeah. True.
It's very weird. It's like, and it's a good scene, and the guy that plays Henry Allen, like,
Yeah.
really, he acts his ass off for that 30
Oh
seconds in the
yeah, he
courtroom
does a
scene when
great.
he's like
Yeah,
happy
he does a
crying,
great
and
scene.
the scene
Yeah.
itself is so good. And they even reference it right after when the reporters ask him. He's like, "Oh, the tomato sauce moved
The
from the
tomato sauce move.
bottom shelf to the top
Yeah.
shelf,
Yeah.
and then the spaghetti was unraveled or something like that."
Yeah. I
But it
feel
wasn't
like
because he changed the
maybe
past again. It's like,
I feel like it's maybe different because in his timeline that didn't happen yet. Like the courtroom scene, like the whole court
so
didn't happen
you
yet.
think Barry thought
So
that if the only thing he did was change that one thing, then his dad would get out of jail that day, but nothing else would change?
yeah, it's not like he went back, did that, and then he was exonerated and then was never in jail. Like he still like everything still happened the way it did. It's just that when he got to the court, which never happened in the movie until the end, then that's when it changed.
Okay.
So maybe that exonerates his responsibility.
Okay, here's another thing I've seen a lot of people bringing up in their reviews that I thought was funny.
Hmm.
There is no way in real life that that footage would clear his father
Oh yeah, you think so?
because they say they show in the flashback when
Uh
Barry
huh.
remembers his mom dying.
Yeah,
Henry Allen pulls up to the house, hears the mother screaming, runs into the
that is
house,
true.
and then is there with her while she's dying.
That is very
No
true.
matter what, he's still at the house when she dies. That doesn't prove that he didn't do it. It
Yeah.
proves that he went to the grocery store.
Yeah, that was a bit strange to me if yeah, it's like they
Also,
set
it
up the
still doesn't
whole
work for
video
Barry
camera
either
thing.
because in this version, Barry didn't see his mom die. So
Yeah, he
he
didn't
can't
witness it.
say that he witnessed his dad come home and find her that way. When Barry comes downstairs, his dad
He's
is already
holding
with
her,
her.
yeah. Yeah.
So like that evidence would not hold up at all.
No. That is a good point. That's actually a really good point. That doesn't make much sense.
I just thought that was more funny than anything. Like, it didn't ruin the movie for me, but it was
Yeah,
really dumb once I noticed it. I was like, wait a minute.
maybe something happened there in the edit where it really fucked up the scene, but I don't know. Because it sounds the way the editing makes it seem is like Barry's upstairs, you hear her get stabbed as the dad's pulling up, and then he runs into the house. But maybe that's an editing thing, and that's not how it was supposed to play out in the actual script.
I don't know. I like to think that those things happened simultaneously. That
Yeah,
Barry came down the stairs as the dad was running into the house.
yeah, that's kind of
Because
what
they
I
don't
assumed.
really show it that way. But that's kind of how I assumed it worked. Because if Barry's in the house and he hears his mom scream like that, and then he gets
Yeah,
up and walks down the stairs, how big is that fucking house? How is it going to take him that long?
right.
If he's running down the stairs to see if his mom's okay, and his
Exactly.
dad's running into the front, he got to unlock the front door, run all the way in.
Unless the door was unlocked,
Yeah,
I
which I mean
guess
it
isn't
probably
kind
was
of
if a
normal.
murderer just walked in the house and killed her, but I
True.
mean,
Okay, so if we're still talking about the murder scene, so I wasn't completely convinced that they were gonna somehow show the death of Nora. Is her name still Nora in this? I
yes,
don't
it is
remember.
still
Okay, it's
Nora.
still Nora. I wasn't convinced that they were gonna show the death of Nora without somehow showing the reverse flash, but they did. The way it plays out in the movie makes it feel more like a random mugger or someone broke into the house and stabbed her. Barry even said, like, if my dad was still home,
She wouldn't have died.
the she wouldn't have died
Which
because
is
the
weird
mugger
because that
thought
ends up
the
being
house
true.
was
And if
empty.
Reverse Flash was the one that killed her, he could have killed her in a millisecond.
Regardless. But I saw an article not too long ago where Andy Muschietti talked about doing a sequel to The Flash where they would have to introduce Reverse Flash because that's Barry's mom's killer, so you have to eventually do that story.
Yeah,
And it's
so
just
in
like,
in the
what?
original version of that story, we learned that
It's not.
Barry's mom
Yeah.
was murdered and all that stuff. It's not
Yeah.
revealed until later in the comics that the Reverse Flash did it.
Right. Yeah.
So technically, they it could have still been revealed later that it was Reverse Flash. However, the logic of if my dad wasn't home, this wouldn't have happened doesn't work with that because Reverse Flash is fast as fuck and he could have still stabbed the mom in the room with the dad
That's true.
and the
I mean,
dad still would have gone to prison for it. Like it's the exact same sequence of events.
yeah, but if it's from Barry's perspective, he doesn't know a speedster did it. He just thinks someone killed her. So
No, yeah, that's
that's
what I'm
him
saying.
assuming.
So like
Yeah. So, but my thing is that did the Reverse Flash actually like use his super speed, or did he just like wander into the house and stab her like a regular mugger?
oh, you think he
Because
like snuck into the house and stabbed her so that Barry wouldn't hear?
yeah, because it didn't seem like there was any super speed being used. It just kind of seemed like she was stabbed and that was it. But like I don't know, it's hard to tell because they don't show it, so it's really difficult. I want to bring up something I already talked to you about before, and I want to kind of use that to go back to a subject we were talking about already. But um, so I noticed a cameo from the actor who plays Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones, Nikolaj Coster-Waldau. So, but you pointed out to me the correct like scene it was a part of. I had just seen the movie, so everything kind of blended together. But it's when young Barry is going, you know, wreaking havoc at the beginning of the movie and steals a guy's piece of pizza and he, eats it. And the guy he steals it from is fucking Jamie Lannister from Game of Thrones. I thought that was a very interesting cameo because that a cameo like that, you would just put like a random extra in, but like that guy was fan cast for a long time to play the Reverse Flash. And I kind of wonder if they did that to fuck with people.
Hmm. I mean, it might be. It might have been put there to mess with people. It could just be like, a little Easter egg because fans wanted him, you know.
Right.
Kind of like what they
I
did
mean, like
in Multiverse of Madness, just on a much smaller scale.
a very much smaller scale. Like, I mean, I guess there's nothing saying that that couldn't be Reverse Flash, I guess. It's a very strange cameo, but
Imagine they
eh,
reveal in the sequel that he's like, I was there the day you got your powers, Barry.
yeah, what the fucking
When your
like
naked ass was wiggling around on Fifth Avenue.
like, spoilers for the new Spider-Verse, but it's just like the fucking spot.
Yeah, like the Spot. Yeah,
Like the
he's just some
fucking
random
spot.
guy.
He's just a random dude that he
Yeah,
stole a piece of pizza from
yeah,
and ruined his life.
that would be so stupid.
It
I
would be.
became the Reverse Flash to destroy you, Barry, because you stole my pepperoni pizza.
It's so stupid.
I would walk out of the theater if that was true.
I
I
know
would
you
walk
would.
out. I
I
would be
know
like,
you
"How
absolutely would.
fucking dare you? This is George Clooney stupid. Okay, don't ever do that to
Is
me."
George Clooney stupid?
Oh,
um,
but imagine they somehow get the fucking balls to try to make a sequel to this movie. They keep Ezra Miller and everything, and then that's the plot we get: is
I
that
know,
the guy
right?
you stole the pizza from is the
You
villain.
stole a piece of pizza. I I wanted to talk about that because I wanted to transition back into the cameos. Um, because there's one thing that I thought during the movie that I thought was so weird. I
Hmm.
mean, there's a few of those, but um, so you got all of the deceased actors in there. You have to CGI their face. That makes at least a little bit of sense. But then you see Nicolas Cage, Superman,
I knew that was coming.
and I'm pretty sure I saw a post somewhere saying that he actually is in the like Nicolas Cage was on set for the movie. Like he filmed for the movie.
Hmm. That's what I heard too.
So why in the goddamn fuck is he CGI?
And why is
Why
it
is his
so
face
fucking
CG?
bad?
Yeah, like
His,
why is his
did you
face
notice that
CG?
like when he turns, I don't know if they completely CGI'd over actual Nick Cage standing in a green screen room or
That
what,
must have been what
but
happened,
the
right? If he was
face at
there.
one point, like one of his eyes looks way smaller than the other, and it looks super awkward when he's
It
turning
looks
around.
so strange. I feel like they used a lot of reference of like the costume test of him in the Superman suit.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So maybe that's why it looked a bit wonky because those pictures are still photos.
And
But
it's old.
and it's old pictures. But I'm so like if you had Nick Cage there, I don't know if he was in a mocap suit or in an actual costume. But either way, like if you had Nick Cage there, why is his face CGI?
A
What?
lot of people
Why?
said that about Supergirl as well, because that actress is
Supergirl.
still alive
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
she
yeah.
was in the CW shows as a cameo. So people were like, why the fuck didn't you just have her come on set
And
and film
de-age
a
her.
scene?
Yeah,
Even if
if
you
at
didn't
least
de-age her, it's been
de-age
so
her.
many years, you could just say, like, I mean, it would have been weird because they de-aged Christopher Reeve, of course, but
Well, it's supposed to be the same like time period as
yeah,
it was
yeah.
taking place, so at least de-age her. But yeah, they were both completely CG, which makes no sense.
Yeah, I didn't like that either. I thought it was
But
really
the
weird.
Nicolas Cage one is the weirdest. Like, why? That movie never existed, so you don't need to like,
Yeah,
oh, it's a younger version. Like, no, just have it be Nicolas Cage. Give him a wig.
yeah, there was no
Like,
reason to de-age him for that. Just put
no.
him in a muscle suit
And
and fucking put a wig on him. It's not.
and that was the biggest thing to me about the CGI. Like, all the CGI was actually fine. It was the biggest problem for me was the face replacements. That
Yeah.
was the weirdest shit. Like, they have two Ezras, and one of them is CGI sometimes. And it's just like, why?
Okay,
Just
yeah,
have the
I did
two.
notice that too because it's not sometimes it's not two people that they Photoshop Barry's face on.
Yeah, sometimes it's
It's like
actually two
a
performances
whole
from Ezra Miller.
CGI human standing next to
Or,
Ezra Miller.
yeah, they did like three different things. They did like a full CG Ezra. They did a different actor with a CG Ezra face. And then sometimes they did just the traditional like split screen technique where it's both actually Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
But it's like, why? Why did you? There were some. The weirdest ones were when they were both not on screen. Like there's a shot, like several shots, where it shows just one of the berries, but his face is still CGI, and you're not seeing the other one.
Okay,
And it's just like,
okay. I want to
why?
talk to you about one of those in particular
But
because it
why?
drives me fucking nuts both times I've seen the movie. It pissed me off.
I think I know
It's a
what one you're talking
close-up
about.
shot of the Flash,
Yeah,
and every time it's completely CGI. The lighting
yeah,
for the CGI is off, the movement for
yeah,
the CGI is off, and it's the part where they're in the Batwing with Michael Keaton.
yeah.
Every time they do a close-up of him, he looks
It's
like if the
CG.
Flash was in fucking what was that goddamn Tom Hanks Christmas movie? I know you know what I'm talking about. What is it
Polar
called?
Express.
Yes. It looks like the Flash
Yeah,
from the Polar Express universe.
yeah,
It's like they wanted it to look real, but it's still a cartoon. Like it's
yeah.
so fucking weird. And my
No, that
problem with it
weirded me
is
out.
that it's so fucking noticeable. And the lighting on it is so bad. And the animation on his face moving is so bad.
I think my main problem with it is that it was unnecessary because it's a close up of just one of them. Why did you
That's
need
what
to
I'm
CGI
saying.
his face?
Not only
Like,
did they do unnecessary CGI for that shot, it's fucking atrocious.
I can at the very least understand why they would CGI one of the faces if it's both of them in the same shot. But there are so many close up scenes of one or the other where it's a CGI face. It's just like, why?
It's
Why is it
because
CG?
they hate us. I
Why?
don't know.
It doesn't
They
make
just
sense.
wanted us to suffer. They wanted us to notice it and be like, "What the fuck?" Like that's what it's there for, I'm
That
convinced.
is the weirdest.
It's
That's the that's the big CGI thing to
I'm
me.
glad that you noticed that shot too because
Oh no,
that
I
pissed
noticed
me
immediately.
off so
Yeah,
much for both of those reasons. That for one, everything about it is bad. And then
yeah,
for two, it's completely unnecessary because it's a fucking close up. Just put a close up
yeah,
of the Flash in a fucking chair.
yeah.
It's
It's like
so
you
unnecessary.
already have him in the costume.
Yeah, you
Why
have
do
the
you need to
costume,
CGI
you
his
have
face?
everything available. Just film the scene like you did in like the bedroom, where
Yeah,
it's like back and forth with one Ezra Miller and then Ezra Miller in a wig, and then Ezra
yeah,
Miller is
exactly. It
completely
doesn't.
fucking pointless.
It makes absolutely no sense as to why you're CGIing his whole face, unless there's some behind the scenes bullshit that we don't know about. Maybe they had a good reason to need to CGI the face, but as it stands here, it's just like like it's a close up of one of them. Just fucking use real footage. Why?
The
Why?
fucking Polar Express Barry Allen is the weirdest shit. It was, dude, that to me, that single shot was like it felt like when The Rock comes out as the Scorpion King. That's what it felt like to me. That was this movie's version of that, was that scene.
I will
Like
say,
the second I saw him, I was like, "Oh, like that is not
I'll
right."
I actually did think Polar Express while watching this movie, but it wasn't that.
Oh
It
no.
was actually when we first see the like chronosphere scene where you're seeing like all the different
Yes.
layers of the timeline. But that's when I got the Polar Express vibes because you could tell everybody there was animated. But I will say we talked about this earlier where I sent you an article saying that Annie Muschietti said that the reason the CGI looks so weird is because we're in Barry's POV and it's warped and it's, yada
Yes.
yada yada. And when I read that before watching the movie, I was just, okay, that's probably like a BS excuse. And I think for the most part it still was.
Yeah.
But that scene actually, I can understand
Yeah.
where he's coming
I think
from
that
that.
the implication of it was that the Chrono Bowl sequences were supposed to look like almost like a museum exhibit where it's like wax
Yeah,
figures or statues of those
yeah, where
memories,
it's
like
not
still
actually
images.
supposed to look real because it's his memories. Yeah,
Yes. So that was fine. I understood
yeah,
that. I would actually be 100% willing to excuse the CGI in those scenes
yeah,
if that was the only part that the CGI was that bad.
yeah,
But
exactly.
it's not. So they're trying to say that the only reason that the fans are complaining about the CGI is those scenes, and that's
Yeah,
not even close to true. There's tons of close-ups
no,
with Ben Affleck at the beginning of the movie that look fucking horrible.
yeah, there was like pretty much the first close up of Ben Affleck in the scene. You could tell is CGI,
And it looks
and I'm
bad.
just like, why? We
And
know
and
they shot
it's
those scenes.
and
Why
it's
is it CG?
noticeably bad. It's like just put him on a bike with the mask on in
They
front of a
did.
green screen.
They did.
But why
They
is
put
his
him on a bike.
but it looks like
I don't know,
it
man.
looks like
I
they deep faked his face, like mask and all, onto the
Yeah.
stunt driver.
I mean, that's more than likely what they
Because like
did.
when
But
he's
I've seen so
talking,
many
his
movies that look
face
way
isn't
better than that.
moving naturally,
Yeah.
and like the mask is clearly CGI.
Yeah.
And it's like
Which
it
I'm
just looks
fine if the mask is
so
CGI, but his whole face is CGI,
yeah, everything
and it's
about it
just
is
like
bad though. That's what I'm saying. It would be fine if it was CGI and it looked good. But it's
this is an
CGI and it looks bad.
unfair. This is an unfair comparison because when I think of head replacements, face replacements, stuff like that, or even like full CG characters that are like completely unnoticeable, like what the fuck that was a CG character type of thing. I think of Logan. When you're seeing
Mmm.
the second version of Logan, the X-24,
Yes.
that's like almost always a CG Logan if they're on the same in the screen at the
Yeah.
same time.
It's all camera tricks
And
and CGI.
yeah, and I'm like, bro, what? That was a CG character? But it's unfair because that movie doesn't have nearly as much visual effects as this movie
True.
does.
Very true.
So it is a bit unfair of a comparison. But even in like, the scene where Logan's driving away, um, in the limo, he's trying to get away from the fucking goons that are in the desert,
Mm-hmm.
and he has to try to get past the train. There's a lot of shots, that close-up shots of Logan's face in that scene when he's driving that are completely CG, and I never knew, not even once.
Up until this second, I didn't either. I thought
Yeah.
they just green screen shots of him in the car and then cut it together with the stunt footage like most movies do. I didn't
Yeah,
know they
no,
CGI'd him into the car.
you can go find a visual effects breakdown for Logan, and it's a completely CGI head on like a stunt double driving,
That's
and it's like
crazy.
completely unnoticeable. Yeah, it is insane. So I
I
unfairly compare like CG head replacements to that because it's just like I never knew that that was CG, and I don't think I ever would have unless I watched the behind the scenes stuff. But like I said, that movie doesn't have nearly as much VFX shots as a movie like this does, so it's not a very fair comparison.
no, but I get what you're saying though, is that like they
Yeah.
they did it so well that 99% of people don't know.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
this movie with arguably a bigger budget
Right.
could
Oh,
not
yeah.
make it look passable,
Well,
which
that's
is
not
a
arguable.
problem.
That's like almost definite. But yeah, exactly. It's
Like
it's strange to think of.
I'm willing to forgive some shaky CGI here and there.
Yeah.
You know, like I think most of Quantumania looked good,
I think
Except for
most important
MODOK.
idea.
MODOK looks fucking awful. I will admit that.
Honestly, I don't think MODOK looks that awful. Like he doesn't look good, but
It's the face stuff that's bad.
but
Like
my
MODOK
my
itself, like when the
defense
mask
of
is closed
MODOK.
and stuff.
Oh yeah, he looks great with the mask closed. My defense for MODOK, and I will say this in general, is that I don't blame the CGI for that. I blame the character design for that. How are you ever gonna make a character that looks like that look real or
Yeah,
good?
that's fair.
It's like you're never gonna do that. So I think MODOK looks good for what the character is supposed to look like. I just think people had weird expectations for that
Yeah,
because
I
they're not
do agree
used.
that there's no way to make MODOK accurate and look real at the same time.
Yeah, there's just no fucking way.
But it
Like,
is like noticeably jarring when that mask
oh
first
yeah,
opens. Like
oh
it's
yeah,
and there was a lot of moments in this movie that felt like that for me.
yeah,
That
for
it
sure.
didn't ruin the film for me, but there were
No,
moments that were so bad that I was like, "Yo,
yeah,
what?" Like like I literally like I remember when I saw Quantumania the first time and that mask opened and there was a guy in the front of the theater that literally went like, it was
yeah.
it was so unbelievable, dude. It
That's
was
funny.
hilarious.
I feel like they might have done some CGI head replacements. I don't know, maybe because they changed lines and they didn't want to do reshoots, so they just changed the face with CGI and then had them do like overdubs. Maybe that's one of the reasons.
I don't even know, dude.
It's just such that is the
I
weirdest thing. I've never seen something where like you have the same actor playing two characters and one of them is CGI even though it's a close up. That's so weird to me.
yeah, I I genuinely think this is like my theory on pretty much all the problems with the movie. I think because Warner Brothers had no idea what they were going to do with this film and they kept changing it in post-production,
Yeah.
I think that is why the movie feels unfinished. I think
Yeah.
they borrowed stuff from multiple drafts of the film, which
Mhm.
causes the script to be a little jumbled. There's stuff in the script
Sure.
that definitely doesn't belong. Like the Barbie joke was definitely from a version of this movie where there was something that set that up, but there's no setup for it.
Yeah, yeah, like that was a weird like it was kind of funny, but I was just like, "What? Where did that come from?"
Exactly, yeah. There's so many little moments like that in the film where like something happens and you're like, okay, and then there's no follow-up for that. Like the calorie
Yeah,
thing. They constantly talk like at the beginning, it's they focus so much on like if his calories run low, his speed will run out and then he won't be able to save somebody.
true.
And then later in the film that never comes up again. It's just jokes about young Barry eating, which I
Yeah, you
thought
would
was a
think
little
that would
strange.
come up.
They focus so much on that for the whole opening of the film, and then it means nothing.
I guess that they wanted to like nail it into people's heads that hey, he has to eat a lot, and then that's the setup for all those weird like he fucking like eats a face full of spaghetti and shit.
Yeah, and like the rotten broccoli and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's definitely why it's there, but
yeah.
it does feel weird that there's I thought for sure in the third act something was going to happen where one of them would be low on calories because they forgot and
Mm.
then somebody would die and they'd blame themselves for it.
I honestly didn't think about the whole calorie thing when watching the movie, but my mind's I'm just going along with it. I didn't think of that,
Yeah,
but
I didn't think about it as much until it got like late in the film.
mhm,
And then I was like all pretty close to the end of the final fight. I was like,
yeah,
in my head, I was like, it's kind of weird that he hasn't checked his calorie watch like once since the beginning.
yeah.
And it was like not a big deal. Like I said, there's a lot of little problems with this movie that don't ruin it for me. But
Yeah.
there's so many of them that it does bring my score down because I'm like, they either set up or don't set up so many things that happen in the film at random.
Mhm.
And then they either throw it away or like the Barbie joke feels like the payoff for something
To
that's not in
something
the
else.
movie.
Yeah.
And I think that my theory is that maybe in an earlier version of this film before it got cut up was that the scene where Barry is dancing across the street.
Oh,
I think
that
that
he's
song may
singing
have been the
Barbie Girl.
song that he was listening to. And then they don't
That's
show
funny.
that in the movie because they show him walking across the street with headphones on, but they don't
Yeah.
show you what he's listening to. And then
What
it
he's
cuts
listening
back
to.
to older Barry and he's like, shit. And then he runs off.
Yeah.
They don't explain it, I mean, it's not important. They don't have to. But the Barbie joke being there makes me think that that might have been the song he was listening to.
That's my headcanon now. He's just
Because
listening to
him
Barbie Girl
dancing across the street, kicking his legs
like a
out and
fucking
shit.
idiot. Yeah.
I think because I
Yeah.
remember
That's funny.
when John Campia's early review came out,
Hmm.
he said I can't give you any context, but there's a part where young Barry's dancing across the street, and it was the so funny. And him and Ray were talking about it like it was the most hilarious shit they've ever seen. And
Oh,
so then when I got to that scene, I was like, oh, here it is, and nothing happened. So I
I
wonder
just
if
think it
maybe
was
at
a funny
CinemaCon,
situation.
that scene was a little different, or maybe were just saying like the him eating dinner with the parents and then freaking out was the funny part.
I just
Because I
think
did
like
think
the
that part
editing
was
of that
funny.
was funny.
When he was like,
I thought that
shit,
was
I have to
shit,
shit
shit.
outside, and then he ran off.
Outside. Yeah, I thought that was funny.
I thought that it was actually really funny. So
Yeah,
that may have been what they were talking about, but the way that they
yeah,
talked about it was like that in particular is what made
yeah.
that scene funny.
Oh,
And so
I
I
see
was
what you
like,
mean.
that's kind of weird that I wonder if that was different at CinemaCon or something.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious if anyone's talked about like no other than the ending. There's no like major differences with the movie.
What I've heard from most of the people that I've been able to find that went to CinemaCon is that the ending was changed and they were told so I've heard from multiple people that they were told that the film was unfinished, and
Hmm.
others have said they were told that the VFX were unfinished.
Yeah, I thought that was very strange that there's kind of two different stories
So
being
I don't
told
know.
there.
I mean, it's all hearsay, so there's no way to prove like who was right. Or like maybe
Yeah.
some people just assume that they meant the VFX, or maybe they said the VFX, but people were
Hmm.
just like they don't really care, so they're letting it go, so they're not bringing it up. I don't know, but it could be either of those things, honestly. But
Yeah.
I think that what happened most likely was probably that they said the film was unfinished, and then because this is the same version of the film except for the ending, people are upset because they assumed that they meant the visual effects.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like people just assumed that they meant the VFX just because I don't know. I didn't watch many CinemaCon coverages of The Flash, but the only one I did watch was John Campia's, and I believe the word he used was the film was unfinished, not the VFX.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's, maybe he was mistaken, maybe he wasn't, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say because, like I said, it's all
Technically, you
hearsay. It's
can,
all so.
yeah. I'm kind of curious if the VFX were actually like finished, quote unquote, by the time the movie did come out. I just, because what, CinemaCon was 2 months ago?
Mm-hmm.
They definitely were still working on VFX at the
You think
time.
the VFX were even worse at CinemaCon?
I don't know about worse, but maybe just unpolished.
Hmm.
That tends to happen when they release movies a couple months early. People will be working on big blockbusters for like up until like the day before or 2 days before the movie comes out. So,
Yeah, I don't know.
That happens.
depending on the version of that story that is true, if they really said that, don't worry guys, the VFX are unfinished, it's going to be better,
Mhm.
that sounds really shady to me because it sounds
Mhm.
like they told everybody at CinemaCon, don't worry, this movie will look better when it comes out. And then it came out still shitty, but they were like, but now nobody got to say it before the movie came out.
I feel like you'd be hearing a lot more stories about that if they really did say VFX. I feel like they said the film is unfinished and people kind of took that in different ways.
Yeah, I don't know because I've been seeing a ton of people say that like the CGI is like the biggest criticism with this movie's getting,
Oh,
which
for
in my
sure, yeah.
opinion is not the biggest problem with the movie. I think it's the
Mhm.
most noticeable surface problem with the movie,
Mhm.
but it's not the biggest problem. I think that the
Yeah.
the writing for the third act is the biggest problem with this movie.
Mhm.
But the like the idea that the CGI is trending like so fucking hard for this
Yeah,
movie is
for real.
insane to me. Like like we were talking about it before I started rolling, but like basically the whole like DC fandom is treating this movie like Star Wars fans treated The Last Jedi. Like if you
Yeah.
go on Twitter and you look up this movie, it's people either saying if you don't like this movie then fuck off, or it's people saying if you like this movie then go fuck yourself. Like it's
Yeah.
and there
It's
is
like,
no in between. Like I
yeah.
commented on somebody's thing saying that I think it was like a new Rockstars tweet or something
Mhm.
like that. But I commented on there because they were saying that they were asking if people feel like the critics are being too hard on superhero movies now.
Mhm.
And they used the picture of the Flash's critic score as like their reference.
Yeah.
And so I commented on there, because they're asking for people's opinions.
Yeah.
So I commented on there and I said, I think that the score for this one in particular is pretty fair
Mhm.
because it's their job to be critical of the movie, so they're noticing a lot of the problems. I noticed a lot of the problems. I'm not a movie critic.
Mhm.
So it's but I basically just said like, the movie is not perfect. It's not the 10 out of 10 that people were led to believe it was.
Mhm.
And like the CGI is bad. The like the third act is really messy. There's like tiny plot holes. There's like and then you get to the basically at the end of the tweet, I was like, it's perfectly fine if other people love this movie, like I don't hate the movie. I liked it.
Yeah.
And then like literally the my response has like 500 likes and then like 100 comments from people basically telling me that I'm a dumb fuck and that and that like my opinion is terrible and that this movie's perfect and all. And I'm like,
All
yo,
right.
I literally said it's fine. If like a one guy tried to say, well, your opinion doesn't fucking matter because the majority of people like this movie. And I was
What?
like, it does matter because there's a lot of people that feel the way that I do. So you can say, yeah, the majority of reviews are positive. But the
Yeah.
majority of positive reviews that I have seen across YouTube have been closer to what I've said and what you've said, which is like the movie's like a somewhere between a 6 and a 7.5ish. Like
Yeah.
nobody's saying they hate the movie. Well, I mean, I can't say nobody's saying. So there's definitely a
Well,
lot of
yeah.
people saying they
People.
hate
Yeah.
the movie. But
For sure.
like a lot of the positive reviews are very mixed on how they feel about the movie.
Right.
So you can't say, everybody thinks this movie's an 8 out of 10 because that's
Oh
not
yeah.
the case at all.
No.
But it made me laugh because like it's the way that people are acting is so aggressive and it feels like when Last Jedi came out. I remember when that movie came out and you and I walked out of the theater and we were like, we don't know how we feel about this movie. And then
Yeah.
after a couple rewatches, you liked it more and I liked it less. And I feel
Yeah.
like this movie is going to be the exact same way, where like everybody walks out of the theater and they're like, I don't know if I like that, or like they're like, I liked it, but it's got problems. And then the
Yeah.
more they watch it, it's either going to bother them more or bother them less.
Yeah.
And I think that that's definitely what's happening right now because if you go on Twitter, it's really fucking crazy how like aggressive people are saying that they're muting like hundreds of accounts because people are
Right.
attacking them for their opinion on the movie and stuff like that. I'm like, this is insane. Like,
I I would like to talk more about the third act
okay.
because to me it was I liked what they were trying to do, but the entire thing just feels very rushed.
Yes.
And yeah, so I guess start off with the whole Dark Flash thing where the younger Barry that's been hanging out with the main Barry the whole time ends up going back in time over and over and over to try and save Batman and Supergirl from dying.
Mm-hmm.
And we figure out that this Dark Flash character that ended up pushing him out of the time sphere and the Speed Force to start the whole thing, anyways, is that version of Barry who keeps going back and trying to save them and ends up completely corrupting him and turning him into this evil, like, time wraith looking thing. The idea was cool, but then, like we were talking about it earlier, it's weird because he just up and kills himself pretty much in like 2 minutes and then he's gone. It's just like, oh, okay, that's it. Like, I get that the villain of the movie is the situation, right? Like, there's no real villain. Like, Zod and the Dark Flash character are like placeholder characters for villains, but really the villain, quote unquote, is just the situation and the fact that Barry fucked up and has to fix it. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like it could have been way more impactful if we saw a version of Barry that figures out that his mom has to die in order for things to be put back to normal, but he can't accept that, so he goes fucking crazy and then ends up becoming this evil, corrupted version of the Flash. I think that would have been pretty cool to explore for the villain.
Yeah, I think that the emotional climax of the film is the fight between the two Barrys and the Speed Force at the end when they're arguing about like you're going back to kill mom.
Hmm.
And then he's like, no. And then he's like, just give me another chance. And he's like, keeps trying and trying and trying. I
Yeah,
thought that what they were gonna do was have a really like emotional moment where like Barry would come back after trying again and again and again and again and then start crying because he realizes that he's wrong and he has to let
yeah,
go, but he doesn't want to. And that's what I
yeah.
thought they were gonna do.
Hmm.
But instead, they did the evil Barry creates himself twist,
Uh
which, as you know, because we've been friends for so long, I
huh.
fucking hate that twist because they never properly explain how it works or why it even happened.
Yeah,
And it's 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 really pointless because it takes
it's
away from the emotional moment of the scene that they're having together so that they can have this villain twist.
yeah,
But the villain twist is really only there to kill the young Barry so that main Barry can fix the timeline. Like it felt completely unnecessary. Like they just shoehorned it into the film so that they could have a villain.
but it's strange because the villain is only there for like 2 scenes.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it feels
Like he
like they just
shows up to
shoved it in
push
the
him
film
out,
so they could have it
and
there.
then
Like,
yeah. See, I don't understand your hatred for the evil Barry thing just because I get why you don't like the Savitar stuff in season 3 of The Flash. Like, I get why. But here, at least, it's a little more, closed looped. It's a little easier to understand. Okay, so this young Barry just keeps trying over and over and pretty much does that for fucking looks like millions of years and ends up corrupting himself, and then, you know, he just has to push Barry out of the Speed Force at the right time. It's a little more easier to understand. There's still some loose threads there, but like it's a little easier to grasp than the whole Savitar bullshit.
No, yeah,
But
don't get me wrong. This one is only better than the Savitar thing because this character is not Savitar.
yeah.
The problem with the Savitar twist is that they built it up that this is the speed god and only the speedsters could see him, and all they had all these rules that they
Yeah,
threw
there's a
away so
lot
that they could
that
do the evil berry twist, which was stupid.
yeah.
In this, it is technically cleaner because it's not attached to any of that stuff.
Yeah.
My problem with it is that they never can fully explain how the time loop is possible
Yeah.
because the evil berry had to have been created somehow in order to come back and change that moment.
Right.
How was he created before if the young berry or if the middle berry wasn't there to give the young berry his powers that day?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. How did he know he had to knock him out at that specific time? How was he created before he did that? Like the
Well, I
time loop
mean,
itself should be impossible because that version of the character only exists because Barry accidentally got knocked into that year.
yeah.
So how does the character, you know what I mean? Like it just they never properly explain how the time loop itself is possible.
Right.
If they had done it with another character like Reverse Flash and
Mhm.
said that he accidentally created a time loop by going back and trying to stop Barry or something like that, then it would have worked. But when you do it with a version of a character who shouldn't possibly exist at all without that
Mhm.
event happening, it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. And it's the same problem I had with the Savitar thing because the idea of Savitar coming through time or whatever after Barry and stuff and killing Iris and all that, super cool.
Yeah.
Once you create the time loop that evil Barry created himself, it's like it's a cool concept, but how did he get created the first time?
Yeah.
And how did the time loop happen? Like, how did he know he had to do that to make himself like permanently in that moment in time? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
they never explain how it works, and that's why I hate that twist
Yeah.
because it feels like they do it just so that they could be like, "Ooh, look, Barry's evil,"
Yeah.
because they never explain it.
I feel like I don't love doing the whole, well, if I wrote the movie, then, I don't love doing that sort of thing with movies, but I do feel like it would have been a cool idea if you had the two berries and then you have the moment where he overhears the other berry say that the mother died and that's why he went back in time. And then from there you could do the whole, like he's angry about it, he's, starts to turn evil, he tries to go back in time, he ends up becoming the corrupt Dark Flash, and then from there you could have a villain
Yes.
that Barry needs to stop, and maybe do a whole redemption thing where he realizes that he can't fix the timeline and needs to let his mother die and
That
stuff like
that
that.
was exactly what I was saying earlier. Is that it would it
Yeah,
the emotional climax of the film is between the two berries, and having the evil berry twist undercuts that just so that
yeah,
they can have a twist. And I don't like that because it's like it's there just so you could be like, "Oh wow, what a cool idea," but it does nothing for the film at all. Either
right.
way, he still has to reset the timeline. So it undercuts the emotional weight of the moment just so that they can kind of speed run their way to the resolution. And that bothered me because like I wanted to see more of that like battle between the two Barrys. I thought that that's what
Yeah,
they were doing when he kept running off and getting more
yeah,
and more fucked up.
more like
I
stabs
thought
with
that what
the
they were gonna do
Kryptonian.
is
Yeah.
that main Barry was gonna try to outrun him,
Hmm.
and they were gonna create the time loop by like him being chased and knocked back out into that day.
Yeah.
But instead, they never address how the time loop was created. They just have the evil Barry there for like 2 seconds, just so that he could
Right.
say he did it. And then they never explain how or why or what the
Like
purpose
you
of
could
that
have
was.
even used like I don't know time remnant stuff. Like you could have tried to explain the closed loop with a time remnant, something like that. But yeah, it was a bit strange.
Yeah, it
I
it
didn't hate it
feels
just because
unnecessary.
I liked what they were trying to do. I really loved the design of the Dark Flash. That was cool. I liked what he looked like. I liked when the mask breaks and shit. He looks real fucked up.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
I thought that what they were setting up was that he was going to become the Dark Flash and they were going to fight throughout time while
yeah,
Barry was trying to fix the past.
the
And
yeah.
I was like, "Oh, that's going to be so fucking cool." And then it didn't happen. And I was like, "Why was this character in the movie?"
I thought what they were gonna do for some reason when I see that Dark Flash at the beginning. Excuse me, hold on. Sorry. Uh, when I saw the Dark Flash at the beginning of the movie, I thought that that was gonna be his mom's killer somehow, some way. Because we were talking about this before the movie came out, where I thought that that was gonna be like their replacement for the Reverse Flash,
Hmm.
but it was just like a corrupt version of Barry.
I thought that it was going to be the cinematic version of the Black Flash,
Yeah, that's
and
kind of what
neither of
he
those
looked
ended
like
up
the
being
Black
true.
Flash. Yeah, you could kind of say he's the Black Flash, I guess, in a way. Not really.
It's other than the outfit color.
Yeah,
It's not really the same character at all, but I don't
no.
know. It felt like they put that in there just so that they could have a Flash villain. And it's I don't know, it's just I think that it would have been more emotional had it been like we had seen that evolution on screen, that young Barry became that, and then our Barry
Yeah,
had to fight him.
yeah,
Instead, it was just that he just randomly shows up and it's like, I'm you. And also, I created myself. And I'm
yeah,
the reason that you got stuck in this time. And it's like, and they don't explain how any of it works. And it's a 2 minute
yeah.
character monologue that gets thrown away in an instant death. And it just was so pointless. It was like,
It feels like they tried to take season 3 and season 1 of the Flash
and slam
finales
it together.
like
Yeah.
and create their own thing. It was just like, okay, that could have worked a bit better. I appreciate what they were trying to do, but it was like, yeah, this is a bit strange.
Yeah, I agree.
Uh,
That was my problem with it mostly, was that it just felt
yeah,
unnecessary. It just felt like it was a twist for the sake of having a twist.
right.
Um,
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? Because I've
mm,
only seen the movie once, so far I've talked about all the big things
ooh,
that I can think
you know
of.
what? I have one minor complaint
Hmm.
about the very beginning of the movie. So,
Hmm.
um, they have that scene with Batman that kicks ass, right? The
Yeah.
whole chase sequence when he's like fucking, he's got the flaps on the front of the bike that are blocking all the bullets, and then the
Yeah.
bike blows up and he flies through the air and he's gliding, and like
Yeah.
that shit was so cool.
Hmm.
Then they get to the bridge and they went full Joss Whedon Justice League.
How do you mean?
They reused the lasso of truth joke from Joss Whedon's Justice
Oh.
League, and they made Batman the butt of the joke for the scene. Like they had him acting goofy, like he was over there smiling at fucking Wonder Woman like a jackass.
I don't know. I thought that was funny.
And I didn't like that because like this is like everybody complained about that when they did it in Joss Whedon's Justice League. And I was like, why would you use that joke again? Like, it was kind of funny, but it wasn't funny enough for it to be like, like nobody in the theater was laughing when that scene happened. And I was like,
Alright.
this feels kind of like random. Like,
Yeah.
it was cool having Wonder Woman show up and like save the city. And like she's like, oh, sorry, I'm late. And it was like one of those cool, like, cameo appearance moments.
Yeah.
And like their conversation afterwards, like, it makes sense for them to stand and talk for a minute before they all split up again.
Right.
But I don't know. It's like the lasso of truth, like, initially has always been shown that she puts it on you. She asks you a question, you can't lie.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the Joss Whedon joke and this one, when you touch the lasso of truth, you just start telling all your secrets,
Well, I
which I
mean,
thought
she
was
did
weird.
ask him a question, and then he says something, right? Yeah. He asked her, or she asked him something. I can't remember what she says, but then he says, "It's because I have such a big ego," or something like
Yeah,
that.
he at first he says something about my ego's too big to
Yeah.
thank someone else or whatever, but then he
Yeah.
starts rambling on about how he should give up his money and end poverty because that's what would really
Yeah.
end crime. And he just starts going on this whole rant. And then when
Yeah.
Ezra touches the thing, he starts talking about how he's still a virgin. And I was
Yeah.
like, what the fuck is going on?
I don't know.
It's
I
it's
thought it was
more of
funny.
like a nitpick. I didn't think it was funny, and I just thought it
Hmm.
was like really like, why would you recycle that joke after people complained about it?
I didn't see that many people complain about it the first time, but I don't know.
I don't know. It just
I didn't hate it.
it felt really like campy to me, which is
Yeah.
like, it's fine if you're doing that with the Flash,
Uh-huh.
but not with Batman. I,
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't, it just doesn't work for me when they try to make Batman in the suit funny. Like,
Hmm.
it really like does not work. But like I said, it's more of like a
I don't
personal
know. It
thing.
just
It's not really
depends
like a
on the
flaw of the film.
context.
It's just like, I don't know. It just didn't work for me like on any level. Also,
Hmm.
Batman's mask looked super
Hmm.
fucking awkward in that scene when they're talking
In
on the
that scene.
bridge. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but if you look at like the nose for the mask, it looks like
Hmm.
stretched or like squished or something. Like the actual face mold for the nose part of the mask looks fucked up.
Really? I didn't notice.
And I've seen people post screenshots of like when he's standing there smiling, and it looks fucking weird. Like,
Huh.
something about it is off, and I don't know what it is. I think it's something around the nose, but just the way that the mask was shaped it just looks fucked up. I liked some of the scenes with the young Barry. Like, I actually thought the part where he first finds out that he has the powers and then he runs
Yeah.
off was
Yeah.
actually really fucking funny.
That was great. I thought
Um,
that was
I
hilarious.
hate young Barry's laugh, the weird like stoner giggle that he does. It was so
I
annoying.
don't know.
It reminded me of, like, you remember that guy from SpongeBob that was always in
Uh-huh.
the background like, ha. That's
Yeah.
what it reminded me of.
It was weird because like I did think the comedy landed more with me than it did with you, but it was still awkward because I only had like three or four people in my theater, so no one else was really laughing, and I was just like, and
Yeah,
that was
it's
it.
just like, especially when they do like certain scenes, it's like they overdo it. Like when he
Yeah,
first gets the powers and he's running around inside the apartment,
yeah.
and he's like, oh, and then he runs off, and then he stops in another place, oh, and then he does the Speedy
Oh,
Gonzalez
okay.
thing, and he's like,
Yeah, the
yeah,
Speedy
I get it,
Gonzales thing
I've
was
done it, and
funny.
then he looks at him, and like his face
It's
is
like
like
his
super
face.
exaggerated, and he's like,
Yeah,
oh, and runs off, and it's like, dude,
I liked
stop,
that.
please
I
stop.
thought that was hilarious.
I thought the laugh was the only thing
Uh,
ruining it for me. It was just the
okay,
laugh was so obnoxious that I was like, bro, stop. Like,
two more
the
things
scene itself was hilarious, and I loved
that.
that actual sequence of him like arguing with the young Barry, and then when he fucking phased through the floor and left the
Oh
robe
yeah,
behind and was naked in the lady's apartment, he comes back again with
that
the
was funny.
pot from her
With the
apartment.
pot, yeah, that was funny. There's two things I wanted to talk about. One that got me pretty hyped, which it was probably unnecessary hype, but I thought it was really fucking cool when young Barry is looking around Michael Keaton's Batcave, and he comes up to our Barry, and he's like, "Look, he's got a bag that laughs." And it's like the
Yeah.
Joker laugh, and
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
that shit is from the end of the first movie when the Joker dies. That's so cool. That's like an unnecessary Easter egg, but I loved that. And then the second thing that I just thought of when you were talking about, actually, okay, two things.
Okay.
Because I thought of this earlier and I was gonna mention it, but I forgot about it. The scene when he's carrying Barry, or when Barry's carrying his younger self,
Mm-hmm.
phasing through the door, and you go inside like the molecules phasing through
Yeah.
each other
Yeah.
and back to the other side. That was so fucking cool.
Yeah.
I was like, this is something the CW show could never do. But it was fucking awesome. I loved that they showed that.
I feel like the CW could have done it, but they just never
They
did, you know?
could have. I guess they could have. It's just something they never tried to show, and I thought it was a really cool way to show like them phasing through the door. I thought
It
that
was a
was,
cool way to show how it actually works.
yeah, it was. And then the second thing, the same scene pretty much. I fucking love the, when he's trying to use his powers and he starts running around the room
Yeah. The
with
one
his
thing
goofy ass run.
the thing that I loved the most about that scene was not just that they were basically poking fun at how stupid he runs,
at
but
how he
also
runs.
the camera work in that scene
Yeah.
was very Back to the Future.
Oh yeah.
When he
For
stopped
sure.
and they cut, like they zoomed in on his face and he's like, "Shit!" It
Shit.
felt
Yeah.
like Great Scott. That's like
Yeah.
that's what it felt like. It felt like Doc Brown when they do
He's
all
like,
those close-ups of
yeah.
him like screaming. That's what it felt like. And I was like,
I
wow, I
loved that
liked that.
so much. That was hilarious. I loved that fucking run around the room. I
It's
thought that was
the
so
best part
silly.
about it is there's
Uh,
no music to the scene.
I know.
So
He
it's
just
just the
run.
shoes squeaking on
Yeah.
like the linoleum floor. And it's just like, "Eep,
Yeah.
shit." I was like, that's so
Slow.
fucking funny.
Yeah, that part was great. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
it's
think,
also I thought of another problem that I had with the movie that I want to
yeah.
talk to you about. This is another problem with the third act.
Uh-huh.
When they do the scene where Barry has to get his powers back, right?
Yeah.
Kara leaves
Uh-huh.
because she says like, she doesn't give a fuck about humans or whatever, right? Then she
Yeah.
flies off, sees General Zod. General
Uh-huh.
Zod kills humans. Now she magically cares about humans.
Uh-huh.
General Zod sees her, doesn't chase her. She comes back to the mansion and then magically knows that Barry needs to be carried into the sky and struck by lightning, even though she wasn't there.
Well, okay, for the second half of that, or the second part of that, I feel like, well, she probably just heard them talking on her way back, talking about, having to do the experiment. I feel like that might be the case that she just heard because she has the super hearing, so she could just hear them from far as fuck away. But yeah, the fact that Zod doesn't chase her is kind of strange.
I thought that what they were going to do is that the third act was going to happen at Wayne Manor.
Oh,
Like they were going to come and destroy Wayne Manor looking for
Wayne
her
Manor.
because they knew she went
Yeah,
there. And I was
that
like,
would have
yo,
been
that would be
interesting.
sick. And I was like
That would have
waiting
been
for that to
cool.
happen. And then it never
Yeah,
happened. And I was like, wait a minute. Are you
yeah.
telling
They
me
just
that Zod came here to destroy this whole planet to find her? Then he
yeah.
finds her, lets her fly away. She could have left the planet. She could
True.
have went
Yeah,
anywhere. Why didn't he chase her?
that is weird. I
I
feel
was
like
like, wait a
maybe
minute.
they cut out an interaction between
I
them.
100% think they cut out Supergirl scenes in this movie. For
Yeah,
sure. I think that there's scenes between her and Barry, the young
yeah,
Barry, that were cut out because they imply that they have some kind of connection going on.
Yeah.
and that's never discussed. And
Hmm.
then later in the film, he's like really emotional about the fact that she keeps dying and he can't save her.
Yeah, that was like
And he
he
like
was very
barely knows her.
obsessed with. Yeah, he knew her for like 3 seconds,
I think that there was scenes between the two of them where they were kind of
like
falling for each other.
getting romantically involved. I
Yes.
think that that is almost 100% the case.
And I also think that there was more to that scene with her flying around by herself. Like there is
Yeah,
more story there that we didn't get because
yeah,
I still think like yeah, you could make the argument that her powers are strong enough that she just heard what was going on at the Batcave.
uh-huh.
But that's really weird that they don't show anything at all. She just shows up and knows what's going on.
True.
Like from a writing standpoint for the audience, like it's really weird that she just like
Hmm.
leaves, says she's not going to help, sees Zod kill people, now she cares about people, now she's back and she knows what's going on. Like there's no
Well, I
story in
feel
between
like
that. And that's
yeah,
most
Zod.
likely the editing that did that. But
True. I feel like Zod killing the people was like a catalyst for her wanting to come back, but she does say later on, like, or she asks like, when you found me and found out I wasn't Kal-El, why did you save me? And I feel like that's her main motivation for wanting to come back and help humans, is because she does realize that there are good humans.
mhm. I don't know. To me, like if they were gonna have that conversation and then have her help Barry get his powers
Hmm.
and all that stuff, and they removed all of clearly whatever the fuck is missing from the movie,
Yeah.
why even have that scene where she goes and sees Zod?
Yeah, that I guess it's very strange. Like,
That was one of my big criticisms about the movie was that it felt really weird that she goes there, she sees Zod, Zod sees her, no confrontation happens at all. There's no other
and
story
then
there. Then she just
Zod
is
lets
all of
her
a
get away.
sudden involved with helping Barry get his powers back. Like there's
Yeah,
no
I
plot
feel
in
like
between
there
that.
was some kind of talk between the two characters that they cut out.
Yeah, I don't it's so weird because she's like, no, and then Zod hears her, turns around, looks at her,
Yeah,
and then
she's
the scene
flying, looking
just
at him. Yeah,
ends. And then
and then
like
she
there's
comes back.
no
Yeah,
why would he not he's traveled the galaxy
to
looking for
find
this
her,
one creature
doesn't follow her, and just stays in the exact same spot in the desert
and waits
until they
for
come
her.
back.
Like
Yeah,
how did he
that
know
was
she was
weird.
going to come back? Why did he assume
Yeah,
she would come back?
that was very, very strange.
He
I never
thinks that she's been on the run hiding from her this whole time.
see. These are things that I needed to watch the movie a second time for, because there's just so much going on in this movie that I'm not thinking about any of these things.
Yeah, no, see, this is why it's all these little things together I noticed the first time. And I
Okay.
was like, bro. And then I started watching people's reviews and they were pointing out more stuff that I didn't notice and I was like, god damn it. that's why that's why my score ended up being as low as it was. Because
Yeah.
it's like I noticed so much that was wrong with the movie.
Yeah.
And then also because the comedy didn't really land for me. So then it
Hmm.
was like that was another big problem. There's a couple moments in the movie that are hysterical
Uh-huh.
that I really, really like, and I liked even more the second time.
Yeah.
But a lot of the jokes that didn't land for me still didn't land for me. And it's just that knocks it down a little bit because it's supposed to be like a comedy adventure movie. So,
Hmm.
but no, it's like from a writing standpoint, there's a ton of like tiny things throughout the film that are like set up and then thrown away, or there's stuff that happens that wasn't set up, or there's stuff like Supergirl where it's like there's like part of a setup but not really,
Right.
and then you get the payoff but there's no build up to it.
Right.
So it's really weird the way that they did it. I did like though the scene between her and Zod where she finds out that he killed Kal-El as a baby.
Oh, that was great.
I was like, yo. She was
Yeah.
like, what did you do? I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah. I would. I do kind of hope they bring her back as Supergirl, because she was really good
I would be
in the
totally fine
very
with that.
little screen time she had, she was very good as Supergirl.
So that concludes our spoiler talk. I gave it a
Yeah,
6.5. You gave it a 7.5.
7. Yeah, around there. I gotta see it again, and then I'll probably get a more concrete score. But yeah, 7, 7.5, somewhere in that range.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me in this 2 hours of complaining.
Hell yeah.
And go check out Cameron's channel. He does gaming content and stuff too.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys later.
Bye bye.